Hey everybody, this is Dan, usually from Japan, but still not in Japan right now. Right now, I am in a hotel room in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Yay! Bensalem was voted as the most exciting town to be in and around Bensalem. Anyway, those of you from Philly know about Bensalem, and you know how fun it is. There's lots of really old bars here. Not good bars, just bars. And you can get a pretty good cheesesteak. And there's a lot of just random lawns with shit on them. So, Bensalem. Yeah, but so quite a bit going on this week. Well, first of all, we got the Ergo hack happening. And of course, before I get too far into this, oh, by the way, Leo is away on assignment right now, so Joe will be covering for him. Say hi to everybody, Joe.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, everyone. Looking forward to getting into questions.
Excellent. So, same here. Now, Joe, how big is that couch behind you? I mean, I just want to know, how big is it?
That's two of them. It's two of them. I'm sitting in the middle.
Oh, okay. Now that makes sense, because that's one of the things, I still think that Joe might be a figment of my imagination, so I'm just kind of trying to test him to see, because like that couch looked abnormally large, but that does make sense. It's two couches together, Joe sitting in the middle, making it look like there's one giant couch behind him. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So Joe, we got Ergo hack happening. Lots of cool stuff building. What's been catching your eye? What do you like?
There's a couple of things that have really been catching my eye. We have one project that's like a data-driven build that's going to be somewhat similar to Glassnode. It looks like that's their game plan. That type of data for users is huge long term. I see a lot of foundational work. We had some. I think it was a guy called the Dark Lord of Programming that built bindings for bindings in Ruby. So, having Ruby support is going to be pretty great. We've already seen some Python tools coming from ErgoPad. So,
Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but listen, you can't say Dark Lord of Programming in your normal voice. It has to be like Dark Lord of Programming. You have to do that, okay? It's all about branding, okay? It's all about making, Yeah, it's all about creating the narrative and then letting people's imagination take flight with it. So, come on, try it. Dark Lord of Programming.
I don't know. I don't know if he's got the Vader style. He could just be like a nice guy that this is Dark Lord of Programming.
A nice guy named the Dark Lord. Okay, yeah. All right. I'll buy that for $1, I guess. All right. Well, keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's all right. Night Owl Casino is always an exciting build that the community is looking forward to. It looks like they're getting closer to launching some of their initial games, and that's pretty interesting. It's the first open source casino with transparent odds that I've seen that allows people to be both the house and also potentially be the player. That's a lot of foundational things that long term, I see a lot of growth potential in, the NFT audios. We have a couple of infrastructure related builds going on that, even though people don't really see them on the back end, it just improves the user experience and, kind of lowers barrier of entry into things. So long term, I see a lot of great projects. I'm excited to actually see what they produce. I haven't looked into, too many GitHubs or information that's been put together yet, but it's still early. So we'll see where things end up.
Yeah, one thing that I keep talking about when I look at anything that's being built on Ergo is, every single time we have these Ergo hacks, it's just quality. We get quality out of this, and I'm really amazed by this. I mean, as the community grows, we get a higher volume. We will get a higher volume of projects building on during Ergo Hack. So I can't say that it will always be like this, but as of right now, pretty much everything I see is just solid. Nobody's screwing around. Everybody's doing amazing work. All this stuff is super interesting. All this stuff is really important to infrastructure building, to community building, to ecosystem building. I agree with you that and I don't want to make it sound like we're like favoring one project over the other, but yeah, I do dig like projects like Night Owl Casino, because really just a practical gamify product is really good for ramping on ecosystems. I mean, people like that. People like gamify right now, and if you build something solid, if you build something usable, people will come to you to use your gamify. And so I think projects like that are awesome, as well as other projects that do other things, like the sound NFTs and back end stuff. I mean, everything has its own place. Nothing is nothing is contradictory to what we're looking to do, or what Ergo is about. So I'm really happy to see that, guys. And listen, so let's do this, okay? And again, I am not going to drive it up too much and hype it up too much, okay? But I'd like to see two things happen, okay? If it's possible, I'd like to have a meetup with fellow Ergonauts at Consensus. I don't know how many of you guys are going to be at Consensus, okay? It doesn't have to be a million people, but I really would love to see as many of you there as possible. Organize something. We'll work with the Ergo Foundation to get something more formal on the books. And during that meetup, if it happens, and if it doesn't happen, we'll do it another way. I will announce something. I mean, this is basically an announcement of an announcement, okay? I will let you guys know about something that I will do for projects that, that really, tickle my fancy, interest me. And because I would like to give more opportunity to as many good projects as possible on Ergo. And again, I'm still contemplating what it is. But it's going to be something. It's going to be something good. It's going to be something useful. We're going to Joe and I are going to work on it, and we're going to make sure that it's that it's good. So yeah, but Joe and I are on it, and hopefully I can see you during Ergo Hack, and see what the community is up to. I mean, how does that sound to you, Joe? You wanna do special for everybody?
I think it'd be great to start getting people to collaborate in real life if they're up for that.
Yeah, and hopefully, I'm trying to incentivize Joe to, put down his chainsaws and his bear traps and come down from the mountain to meet me at least at Consensus. It's still a work in progress. Joe still hasn't agreed to it, but I am working on it. We just had this conversation. Joe, I mean, give me a probability matrix here. Like, how probable is it that I'm actually going to see you at Consensus?
Let's call it 50-50.
50-50.
50-50.
It reminds me of that movie War Dogs. When, I don't know if you guys saw it, but it's a pretty good movie. With Jonah Hill, when he's playing a weapons is like he's a gun runner, and they go to Fallujah, and they have this Jordanian driver, and he's like, so are we gonna make it? He's like, yeah, 50-50. And he's like, so how far is it? 50-50. It's like, I don't think he knows what 50-50 means. But I think Joe does. Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of the updates here from my end. Joe can do some from his end, then we'll get into the questions. I think that's the best way to go about it. So Right. So aside from Ergo Hack and the Ergo Meetup that I'd really like to see happen, I have been working with a couple of entities, as well as trying to organize a more streamlined marketing strategy with the exchange that we're going to be listing on, because there is going to be a marketing push. Would like to have it to be focused and to utilize the opportunity once the listing happens to really, propel Ergo and to incentivize people to come into the Ergo ecosystem through this tier one exchange that we're doing. Joe, as well as I, have been working with that team and trying to kind of move things along. Again, I know people are kind of antsy about it. They want to see this happen. Guys, we want to see it happen as much as you do. We are constantly offering all sorts of help. But again, you got to understand that pretty much all the exchanges have a huge backlog. And just the fact that guys are actually actively progressing integration of Ergo is a big win for us. So just please be patient. I know it's been a while, but it is in progress. Joe and I are checking in with them. I'm talking to them several times a week, almost every day sometimes, and making sure that things are progressing. So very, very soon we will have this. We'll have this out for you, because I saw some questions out there about how to buy Ergo, and I know it's still kind of limited, in the way you can buy it. And so I think this will actually, this integration will actually kind of really solve a lot of that, as well as the next one, because after this, we're going to be negotiating and actually integrating with a second exchange, also of the same caliber. So I think in the next 6 months or so, we're going to see a really big boom in traffic come to the Ergo ecosystem, and to give the opportunity to acquire Ergo. And so one last thing that I wanted to also touch base on, and that I've been working on kind of behind the scenes, because I know I haven't been super active in the past couple of weeks, because just a combination of business that I'm also doing with Cardano, and plus I can't always I don't always have enough time to really kind of be actively in the forefront. However, I have been working on the ecosystem fund that I've been talking about. And so hopefully within the next, I'd say 6 months, we can have something. And again, this will be I hope to make this into a major ecosystem fund for Ergo, and to really, again, once we get the exchange listings and once we get the higher volume coming into Ergo, that will then amplify the exposure of all these projects that are already building on Ergo, are going to be building on Ergo. And so that will then give the opportunity for the ecosystem fund to do its work and to be able to kind of propel these projects into, to the top. So that's about it for me. How about yourself, Joe? What have you been up to?
Sure. I shot a developer update that's coming out this Sunday that is covering a lot of the technical stuff. Probably the biggest highlight of that is that Alex pushed reference client 4.0.29, which has built-in support for EIP 27. We're already starting to see some mining pools upgrading to that version. That's going to be something that we kind of watch, follow, tell miners as blocks start coming in for or against. So that's quite exciting to see. That has been a long time coming. So we're actually kind of in the initial period where we're going to figure out where the pools stand. Now, the threshold for that is 90%, which, if you look at most governance systems, if we had that in the US, nothing would get done. 90% approval to pass is a pretty high barrier. I couldn't even imagine if that, what that would look like here. But in Ergo, it's important that our miners stay unified. So quite excited to see how that, plays out. Now, when we're talking about block governance, basically when a block is mined that is casting a vote. So who knows? Maybe some solo miners will, run the table and have amazing luck and, have some disproportionate representation. It's interesting to watch in proof of work, just because you have that luck factor. It's kind of like, a certain layer of uncertainty that, I don't know, I find a little fun. Let's get to questions.
Let's do it. All right. So, some good questions here. Okay. Well, this is actually an interesting question about governance. Now, it's kind of might be a Pandora's box, but let's just try and see if we can handle this. So, JDS, hello, Dan and Joe. Considering the lies that circulate about projects and the maximalism of certain communities, how would you go about implementing standards in our space? So, what I believe is basically a democratic way to go about it. I think that the community should really set the standards. It should be up to a community vote to set standards. Now, of course, some of the basics have to be there, right? And again, that's something that the community can figure out. We can start with the basic rules, and then move along to kind of figure out what makes sense. Now, the maximalism, I mean, it's always going to be there. You can't really fight maximalism. You can only recognize it and shunt away from it, and just to basically, expose it. But you're never gonna do away with it. So I think that one of the main standards that we should implement in our community, as far as legitimizing projects, is deliverables. Projects that are utilizing the community's sentiment and the community's support should be transparent about their deliverables and should be accountable. They're accountable for the deliverables that they are promising. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, aside from that, I think everything else will fall into place, because if we can, as the Ergo Whale says, if we can under promise and over deliver, that's the best way. So I think that's very important. I think that milestone is very important. What do you think about that, Joe?
Could you put the question up again? I think a big part of maximalism is driven by narrative, right? And the reality is, in the crypto space, a lot of the times the narrative is a bit retarded. I hate to say that, but it's just true. It's like unlimited TPS, and it's like, oh wow, that is like impossible in a finite universe. But it becomes possible that people believe it, and then they have money on the table, right? And so, being that they have money on the table without critical thinking, I guess, they have a tendency to defend it and fight each other, and it becomes this weird. I don't know, man. It's almost like team sports or something. I think the best way is critical thinking, which critical thinking is, to a large degree, learning, challenging, asking questions, and recognizing, let's say, what you don't know, versus, a lot of the times when you get into like the tribalism and fighting, it's just people that don't know what they're talking about.
So, what would you say? What kind of, what kind of standards can we implement in the Ergo community to really kind of fight this tribalism and fight this, just the BS that comes out of some of these projects where, they hype things up, They do they spend all this money on marketing and spend no money in actual development. And they just, they just kind of string people along. And a lot of times they'll actually be able to collect a lot of funds with that kind of stuff. And in the end, really not deliver anything. I mean, what would you say? I mean, yeah.
I think there are like three aspects you really have to dig into, and they all have to do with critical thinking, asking question, kind of analysis, due diligence. The first is that whenever you hear, let's say, about a project, you should be asking fundamental questions in terms of like the technology. Is it open source? If something is not open source and it's either base layer or core infrastructure, you're now in the trust me bro situation. You have no idea as a user, what you're getting into. That is always something that I would recommend people stay away from. Closed source wallets, stay away from people that, aren't willing to show you what they're building, because how can you have a trustless system with black boxes everywhere, right? That creates fundamentally an issue, in my opinion. The second is whenever you hear wild claims, ask about them. Like if they're saying, oh, Dan, I was driving in my car 500 miles an hour, you might want to say, well, what kind of car do you have? What road was that on? Basic questions that, if indeed that is reality, that happened in a certain environment, under certain circumstances, and is there data about that? Or is it just me saying, I ran 500 miles an hour yesterday? And, it's sometimes absent any form of like detail or data around that, it's just a baseless claim. And
DYOR.
You really have to ask critical questions, and the reality is, being that there's a lot of new people coming into the space, probably that's just I don't know, the environment that's happened in like the last 2 years. There really needs to be education. Like, what are you getting into? Because, even the media in this industry does really shitty. It's sad if you open like CoinDesk and they're like, oh, there's this new project SafeMoon and it's going to be really fun. And, we're going to list it on big exchanges. And,
don't get started on the crypto media. This just, it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. Really and I'm embarrassed for them. That's the thing. I am embarrassed for them, because look, we all know that even, mainstream media standards are not, what the average person would find good. Okay. But
it's entertainment.
It's entertainment. But look, crypto media, they need to step this stuff up, or they just need to back off and let somebody else do it, because we can't keep having this shit, okay? We can't keep having this obvious hype and obvious bias come across as news. It's not news. It's bias, and you're obviously shilling your own bags. I just don't understand, and so many people already see it. I think that there's more people, a majority of people that understand that crypto media, the way it is right now, is complete BS. And I just don't understand how long will the crypto media keep going with this, like Cointelegraph with their, with their analysis of God knows what, these ridiculous articles, highlighting these projects that are obviously scams, and then crapping on projects that are actually out there doing stuff, or how many times have they covered Ergo, for example?
Okay,
how many times?
Rarely, and the reality is, it's just paid advertising. It's a paid advertising drag. It's not media. But
it's
anyway,
pitiful. It's pitiful, and this has to stop. And you know what, guys? Maybe during next Ergo hack, we could do a decentralized media or decentralized media platform, something like that. I'd love to see that. Because this kind of stuff, it needs to stop. We need to do better as an industry than this.
No, we hear that a lot at Ergo. They're like, oh, you don't have influencers. It's like, yeah, because I don't want to pay them They don't know what they're talking about. They would just be like, okay, give me a piece of paper, and then I'm going to read the piece of paper and look at a camera. And, everyone's going to think that I know what the hell I'm talking about when I obviously don't.
Exactly.
that kind of thing drives me a little nuts. It's like, that's not what makes this technology work. And the reality is, look at USDT as a good example, right? Good ideas win over time, and crap ideas, you can market them, you can have all the access in the world, and if it's a shitty idea, it's still a shitty idea.
Absolutely. And I was just saying, look, I wasn't making a particular statement about USDT and about Quan, okay, with my last tweet, but I did see this stuff where I mean, I'm assuming that everybody saw my last tweet, but I was basically saying that one of the traits of a good con man is that they're likable. So, and I'm not saying, this, I'm not saying that Quan is a con man. Okay. I'm not saying that at all. Okay. But this kind of brought this tweet came out. Like I thought about this thing when I was reading about Quan and about other projects that just kind of, that basically blew up in somebody's face, and they said, well, I met this guy and he was a nice guy. He's not a con man. He's a nice guy. It doesn't mean anything. Okay. Con men usually come across as likable people. That's why they're confidence people. They build confidence because they have they're likable, they're easy to connect with, and you trust them. They build confidence in you, therefore they're confidence people. Just because somebody is likable doesn't mean that they're not full of shit, doesn't mean that they're not confident, that they're not con men. And people need to realize that, not everybody, just because somebody's out there and they're likable and they're telling you, oh, well, this happened and this happened, doesn't mean it's not bullshit. And that's what that's what this kind of crypto media does. They come out there, they put somebody there, pretend like this person is very likable, this person is very knowledgeable, and all they're doing is they're just reading off a piece of paper that somebody else wrote. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they're telling people who think that they don't know, okay, but in reality, they might actually know more than that person does. It's just because the presentation of this particular information, they think that they don't know, so they think, oh, well, wait a second, that person knows what they're talking about. That means I'm wrong. And this is how this information gets spread. So we have to be really careful about that.
Yeah.
My little rant about that. All right. Well, let's move on from this to another question here. And again, this is one from DigDug008. So it's a bit of a, again, it might be a bit of a Pandora's box, but let's try it. Charles Hoskinson referred to Alex Cipollone as the smartest person in the crypto space. Kushti is very humble, and Charles Hoskinson is a natural hype man. Do you guys agree with Charles Hoskinson on this? Well, first of all, Charles is not a hype man. I'm sorry. He's just not. He is a visionary. I have worked with the guy, and I know the guy for a long, long time. Well, not a long, but 6 years, okay? He does not hype. He speaks like what he's thinking. It might come off as hype. It might come off as really kind of glorified, right? And that's what I keep saying about, the first time I spoke to him, or the first time I had a meeting with him, I also thought it's kind of like, wow, he's got really lofty ideas. I mean, but why isn't my bullshit meter going off? It's because Charles, unlike many, many people that I know in the space, is actually proportionately has delivered so much of his vision versus anybody else that I've known that I will say that he is a visionary. He's a true visionary. He's not perfect. Nobody is, but I would not call him a hype man. Now so moving on from that. Okay. If Charles calls somebody like Alex the smartest person in the crypto space. He means it. There is no reason for him to hype this up. There's no reason for him to lie about this. Okay. He's worked with Alex for many years. He knows Alex really well. He knows Alex. He's known Alex longer than I have. And for him to say that, it means a lot, and it should be taken as a very good compliment, because Charles is actually a pioneer in the field. You know, he's one of they call him, you know, one of the godfathers of crypto or whatever. And so he's a very smart guy. And if a guy like that says that Kushti is the smartest guy in crypto, you better damn believe it. And so, like I said, I truly believe it. I believe that Alex is a brilliant guy. This is why I joined Ergo, one of the main reasons why I joined Ergo. And I would take Charles on his word. But what do you think, Joe?
You know, in my experience with Alex, I would say there are two things that differentiate him between a lot of other people in general in life. The first is that he's very straightforward about what he doesn't know or what he doubts, right? And so that naturally, you know, whenever we have a conversation, he always has certain things to interject that you know, really alter perspective in terms of, you know, rather than saying this is what I know and this is what I should do, it's oftentimes, well, this is what I don't know and this is the trade-offs of doing something this way, right? Which is, there's a lot of checks there. There's a lot of critical thinking involved in having that mentality. You know, a lot of the times when you hear him talk, that's a part of why I would say he comes across as very humbled, because he usually knows what he doesn't know or challenges, you know, his thinking in kind of unique ways. You know, the second is, yeah, he's just I don't know, coding is a lifestyle, right? That's what he said, and I that kind of fits. He's constantly searching his thoughts for bugs.
Yeah. So like yeah, that's exactly it, Joe. Alex is very humble. Alex, I guess one of Alex's traits is that he's an introvert, and Charles isn't. And if Alex was an extrovert, I think he'd be as vocal as Charles. So I just think that we should really take that at its face value. You know, I think that Charles is being sincere in saying that. I believe that Alex is a brilliant guy. I believe that he is the smartest guy in crypto. And we're lucky to have him. We're lucky to have him work on Ergo with us and lead the way with development. And I hope he does that for many, many years to come. All right, guys, let's move on to another question here. Let's see. Okay, here's a good question for Joe. Joseph, if I bring you a cowboy hat and it's a Texas belt buckle, will you be there? He's talking about consensus.
Cowboy hat and a belt buckle.
Yeah,
I don't know. I never liked those belt buckles, if I'm honest. I do a lot of work outside and they just kind of dig into you. Never really got that. In terms of cowboy hat, you know, if I'm in Texas, I'm not against it, but it's hot there. I'm from the mountains, you know. It's kind of like beyond my threshold. I might just melt. We'll see.
Okay, so we need to do better. Okay, we need to think of a better incentive. All right, belt buckles, belt buckles, and cowboy hats. Not working for Joe. We'll figure it out. All right. So a good question from Augustus Kent. Do you think the projects built in Ergo will do better if they follow the same fair launch philosophy of Ergo itself, as it will garner more community support? What do you think, Joe?
I get asked this question by projects directly, and I tell them that yes, you probably will get more internal community support. You certainly will earn some props in terms of, the community saying, hey, this is fair, it's distributed. But it also comes with trade-offs. I don't think that, looking at only the positive side of things is the best way. We got to look at the negative side as well. And the negative is if they want to move to exchanges, that's usually my first question. Is this like a formal project where you're trying to create a token and then, get listed across central exchanges? Because if so, the reality is in this space, you have to handle some business aspects where you probably need to incorporate. You probably need to go through a legal firm and have them assess the liabilities or structure of your token itself. You probably have to pay attention to the costs of listing on an exchange. You have certain expenses in that trajectory that can be painful for a project. And Ergo is a good example of that. People ask, oh well, how come this project just listed and suddenly they have bought market access and marketing everywhere? And it's like, well, because they came to fruition with a lot of funds in their war chest. So if in terms of adoption, it does become more painful. And unfortunately, the downside to the path where you do have some sort of treasury building or seed sale or I guess launch that is more unfair is there are benefits to that as well. You have reputation, you have community support. To some degree, you may have less liability in the future, depending on how security laws play out. So it's not a black and white situation. Both paths have pros, they have cons, and then it just becomes a matter of discussing with the project, what do you want to do? Because the reality is if somebody does want to try to move into market, not only are they potentially carrying the expenses of developers, depending on how big their team is, you also have other expenses and considerations that they need to take into account. Now, if the community got together and said, hey, we will incentivize fair launches by using raffles and using fundraising tools and helping projects cover the initial expense or overhead that it takes to get legal opinions, incorporate, work with exchanges, I would love to see that. I really would. I think something like Ergo Pad is a really valuable tool in terms of bootstrapping liquidity into projects, but there are real expenses that you run into. I wish we still lived in the era of Bitcoin, right? A lot of Bitcoin maximalists will say, well, if there's any foundation or if there's any project behind it, it's just not real. And it's like, the reality is Bitcoin did have a certain advantage where all of the exchange infrastructure, legal, opinion side, and requirements formed around Bitcoin to where Bitcoin launched into a market where that didn't exist. The reality is that is no longer the case. That environment is no longer the case. So, the thinking in and of itself is, in my opinion, one of the stupidest arguments maximalists make, because the only way that you can really launch into the regulatory environment we have today is build a goddamn time machine. And so absent the ability to build a time machine, the reality is you have to deal with the environment you're in. And so even Ergo, it's been painful being a fair launch project in this environment. It's been painful dealing with, the exchange infrastructure, the media infrastructure, and kind of the basic requirements that we have to grow. That's a big part of why, I've been trying to assist and steer the Ergo Foundation in the way I have, because, running as a pure DAO that's decentralized is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I've mentioned this before, and well, I'll say it again. There are beauties about full decentralization of an endowed infrastructure that the Ergo Foundation has, and the Ergo ecosystem has. And but with that also comes its bottlenecks. With that also come, some things are a lot harder to do because it requires consensus from so many different people. Um, Whether that's a good thing or not, it depends. It depends on the situation. I'll be honest with you. There's been some development that Joe and I have been trying to push that hasn't happened as timely as we'd like it to happen because we need to reach consensus. We need to persuade the development teams to do this kind of stuff. Okay, versus an entity like, for example, Cardano. Cardano is a decentralized ecosystem, but you have a big company like IOG building a lot of the tooling, right? So IOG is not a decentralized company. It's not a DAO. It's a regular corporate structure. So in a regular corporate structure, you would demand specific deadlines and specific deliverables and things like that because there's a hierarchy there. There's a corporate structure there. There's people getting salaries based on deliverables and performance, and so that accelerates. Okay, so that accelerates development. And again, I'm not saying that is a better system. I'm just saying that is a lot of times a faster system. So yeah, it's just relative to really what you want to achieve. Getting back to the original question, what's better, fair launch or not fair launch? It's all about what you want to achieve, just like Joe said.
I do. If I can add something, I do think like the path that Ergo took is a good option for projects where you do have a fair launch, but you also have an allocation. In our case, it was 4%. And the reality is, depending on development costs and depending on, let's say I have to form a company, I have to hire a lawyer, I have certain just business expenses if I'm looking to move into the traditional market versus stay on the DEX. That overhead can be heavy. I'm currently working with exchanges that we already are listed on to try to negotiate like a flat rate for quality projects that'll pass through their auditing process on top of Ergo, and hopefully I can help deliver some predictability to developers in our ecosystem in terms of what that cost is actually going to be, because it's just overhead that if the goal is to get to exchanges, that it's not free.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something else that you have to really realize in this kind of still a bit of wild west type of situation that we're in right now. I mean, yeah, there's the crypto space, the blockchain space is getting bigger. There's a lot more, it's a lot bigger than it was 5 years ago, a hell of a lot bigger than it was ago, but it's still the wild west compared to legacy markets, to even the tech sector. Like the standard tech sector, it's still the wild west. There's still exchanges. They set their own rules. There's very few regulations that I don't know, like things like fair business practices, things like. I mean, there's very few things like that in the crypto space and in the blockchain space. So a lot of times you really have to it's almost like you're making deals with clans. It's like the clan system. You're dealing with this clan and that clan and that clan. And sometimes these clans are friends and sometimes these clans fight each other. And yeah, it's, like the work that Joe is doing is very important. And especially in this particular environment, it's very, very important and it's difficult. And it's the same thing for what we're doing with Cardano and listing native assets for Cardano, which is basically the same thing for Ergo, because Ergo's got native assets. So it's theoretically, you think if they know how to build an Ergo wallet, they could just add native assets to it. What is the big deal? But it still is a big deal. It still is. It's like you have to convince them that this is in their best interest. and then they're going to make a lot of money with it because it's really all about money for them. And you have to convince them to prioritize these things if they even do agree to list these assets. So and it's all about really kind of negotiating, and like I said, like clan-like structure. You don't really have too much base infrastructure to work with there. So it's a really difficult task. It's a difficult task, and I commend Joe for being out there and really digging into this stuff and getting these exchanges to start taking on projects like ErgoPad, for example. I mean, fantastic project. But just to be honest, getting them listed on an exchange is not just it's not. I can make a phone call and get the process going, but it doesn't mean they're going to be listed right away. So it's just difficult. It's difficult if you're not an ERC20 token. If you're ERC20, we've been told, Joe can tell you, there was a very prominent exchange that told us, oh, if you're ERC20, we could get you listed by next week. Like, we're not an ERC20, and we had to say it like what, a couple, 2-3 times. How many times?
Yeah. No. Anyway, let's go to the next question.
All right, let's move on to greener pastures and whatnot. Now let's see. So, what's a good question to? Oh, that's a nice question. That's minor focused. So I would like to know how the massive increase in hash rate will affect the Ergo network. So if we have a massive increase in hash rate, what effect would that have on the Ergo network? What do you think, Joe?
Well, I think that this is kind of a good question. Right now, there's some speculation that the ETH merge will happen in August. What is my prediction? I'm going to say 50-50. I have no idea.
50-50. It's 50-50.
50-50, if you look at what the ETH devs are saying, they're saying, the probability is high. If you look at sport bets across the internet in terms of what people are actually putting their money towards, it looks like the sport bet community thinks it's probably more end of year. At some point, they're going to leave. And so all of this hash rate is going to go somewhere. And I think that long term, Ergo is well positioned to pick up a lot of that hash rate. Now, the pros is that will, let's say, increase the security of our network. Are there some potential cons? Sure. You probably will see some mining hopping where, people hop into mine Ergo when the difficulty is low and, hop off when the difficulty is high, and block time will be a little bit unstable. And so I think the reality is, for all proof of work projects, it's just going to be choppy seas. I think we're going to see a lot of migration and rotation in hash rate, and eventually it'll settle. And so, while let's say the dust is unsettled and miners are moving around, figuring out where they're going to go, how their rigs are going to perform on different, proof of work networks, it could be that we go through a period where we have really fast block times, and then people pull their rigs, point them elsewhere, and the block times slow down. And I don't expect it to be like a smooth and sunshiny day, but I think it's just going to be waves that we get through. Eventually miners will probably land on networks and have kind of their rig configured probably in however windows on a couple of chains, and then just mine what's profitable. And over time, good ideas win. And I don't think Ergo needs to win day one, or that's not the point. We just keep building, we keep doing what we're doing, deliver value, and over time, good ideas win. It might be choppy seas for a bit, depending on how unsettled the hash rate and mining community as a whole is, but it will settle again at some point. So Just have to get through that period.
Right. Well, you can't get through the ocean without hitting some choppy seas, right, Joe?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm quite curious. My main hope, and I think that we'll see it, is that all of this hash rate that's going to be free and looking for a home at some point at least preserves proof of work chains. Otherwise, they just shot themselves in the foot, so to speak. So hopefully, we see some practices where it's like, okay, don't mind the biggest pool. Try not to put the security risks for a different network, kind of on the edge. And over time, the market will decide. Versus, the dumbest thing would be, let's try to exploit and everything. And then guess what? Now you have a bunch of hardware and nowhere to mine. So I think we'll see like the better choice long term.
Right. So, hey, Joe, I got the last question. When Rosenbridge?
I don't know exactly. I know it's being put together and tested. I do believe that the first partnership is going to be with Cardano. Now, when exactly is that going to be live? I don't know. I can't predict that yet. Still on testnet.
All right. Well, looking forward to seeing it. Looking forward to using it. I think the community is very excited about it. So hopefully we'll see it soon in operation in its full glory.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think this is a good place to leave it off. And like I said, I would really love to put something together for consensus. I know that a lot of the Cardano community is going to be there, and I know that quite a bit of the Cardano community is also Ergo community. So maybe we can combine something. Maybe not. Look, like I said, I'd love to see it happen. If it doesn't happen, we'll figure out something else. Maybe a virtual event, something like that. So yeah, but I will be kind of putting out some feelers and some like testing the waters and seeing who's interested in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully we can figure out a nice incentive for Joe. Maybe, if it's not belt buckles and cowboy hats, maybe it's flannel shirts and I don't know. Stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't mean to dunk on my Texas brethren out there, but cowboy boots in the mountains, like slick and incline, that's just recipe for pain.
No, but they didn't say cowboy boots. They say cowboy hats.
Cowboy hat and belt buckle. I mean, you gotta complete the look. You gotta have boots. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I guess. I always liked the look of the boot, but I was never a fan of wearing the boot. I tried to go with the boot, and it just bothers me, like the whole thing. I like my shoes to stay on my feet and not my leg. I don't know. Maybe if I lived.
It works if you're stomping around on the flatlands, but when you hit the incline, those like flat bottoms are just dangerous.
Yeah. Well,
you
know what? Maybe listen, maybe we can incentivize Joe with, I don't know, a flannel shirt and a sled.
Flannel shirt and sled. Well, listen, I'll let people know. My bigger concern, number one, I got to balance it with what I'm doing here, but the Ergo Foundation, in my opinion, the best thing we can do is represent the community. And sometimes, I can see the value of going to things like that, but I also don't want to have the ecosystems, covering my expenses on like a vacation. I'm opposed to that. So I need to figure it out on my end. And if so, I'll let everybody know.
Well, if you do decide to go, Joe, I'll make sure that we put you to work. You will not have a single minute to rest.
All right.
I'll have you building mining rigs at night and circling consensus during the day. It's
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to
nonstop.
tinker, and I'm happy to tinker with that.
All right, Joe. Well, I think it's a good time to leave it off for this week. And thank you very much for the Ergonauts that joined us. Thank you for joining us as well, Joe.
Yep. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a good weekend. Get outside. It's supposed to snow around here, but it should move into spring and summer soon. And those of you on the other side of the planet, enjoy it before winter hits.
Yep. All right, everybody. See you next week.